We're gathered here today on Father's Day. And so I think it's really important to unpack the definition of what fatherhood is and what it means to be a father. I once was told by a close friend in reference to someone we know, they are a father and not a daddy. If you take one thing away from today, I want to invite you to lean into this important distinction. Before we get there, though, I want to acknowledge the diversity of identity here, and I want to invite you to consider that although the words father, fatherhood, dad, and daddy are perhaps some of the most gendered words in the English language, I don't intend for them to be attached or ascribed to any particular gender, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, or any other identity that perhaps has been historically excluded from consideration when we think of these words.
Yes. Amen. Thank you.
That being said, my intention today is to discuss my own experiences and identification with these terms, beginning in my childhood, extending to my young adult life, and culminating with my current bouncing experience. For the purpose of identifying the individual that contributed the Y chromosome to all of us, going to refer to that human being as biological father or father. I will refer to dad, daddy, and fatherhood as relational and not having to do with biology. If this doesn't fit with your personal definition of these words just yet, I invite you to lean into a little bit into that discomfort for the time being and listen to my story. My relationship with fatherhood is complex, probably like many of you. That is due primarily to what society has worked very hard to socialize us into. Ultimately, the idea of fatherhood is often shaped by religion or socioeconomic status, culture, language, region even, where we've grown up, and our experiences with both acute and intergenerational trauma. Although I have just worked very hard to make some clear distinctions regarding the definition of these words, the reality is that in many places in the world, these words are completely conflated. A word we like to use a lot in our doctoral program, Cindy and I, but it simply just means confused with. They're confused with ideas about gender and gender identity and gender expression. Often the qualities of masculinity and fatherhood are considered to be one and the same, but I don't believe that they should be. And shortly, I hope all of you may understand why. I am blessed to know my father. I say this because I know that there may be some people sitting here today who may not know who their father is for various different reasons. For instance, one of my siblings had to wait almost 40 years to receive the blessing of knowing who their father was. I knew my father essentially from birth, as much as an infant can know such a thing. In reality, most of this knowing is a reconstruction of old grainy pictures from the early 1970s. Combined with a few fleeting and vivid memories of running through the heather, or listening to my parents argue with each other, or listening to my dad communicate so loudly in Spanish with my uncle, my tío, that I almost always thought that they were fighting too. There are some memories of walking and wrestling in there too. My father was born in 1935 in Colombia. His father, my grandfather, was one of 17 children, 11 of whom survived war and the cholera epidemic.